All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Blair Nickel with FranNet, and we also have Charlie McGee with FranNet. We are your hosts today. And really today is not about Charlie and I. So many of you have attended our webinars in the past. You usually hear Charlie and I jabbering about franchising for a good half hour to an hour. Today is about you guys, okay? Charlie and I have asked a couple of our previous clients to come online, share their experiences, why they did this, how they did it, who are they with, how would they do it differently. And so today is a chance for all of you to ask your questions of people who have gone into franchising, hear it directly from the horse's mouth. And so we set this up as a meeting, okay? So everybody can see everybody, so you can bring yourself on camera if you want to. And as you want to ask questions, just take yourself off of mute and ask away. And in these types of sessions, there are no dumb questions. So these are all the questions that you want to ask and get answered, right? So that's what today's all about. I'll kind of play monitor in the background in case anybody puts anything in the chat room. I'll ask the question. But having said that, again, welcome to Charlie's and I's meeting. Welcome to FranNet. And Charlie, I'll let you take it away and introduce Reggie and Rod.
Great, thanks, Blair. So yeah, great to be with you. Good to see everybody. We're going to be sending this recording to those who registered, which is a fairly high number of people who turns out couldn't join us. Things happen. I'm really appreciative and glad to have Rod Emerson and Reggie John join us today. Great pleasure working with both of these guys. Reggie John and I worked together in 2017 when Reggie was pondering a career path pivot to something different. And Rod and I worked together in 2020 when Rod was anticipating some changes in his work environment and employer and just getting ahead of it a little bit. But I'd say one difference between Rod and Reggie was that Rod was kind of thinking of something as a semi-absentee business that he would continue with a full-time kind of W-2 career. And where Reggie was looking to go all in, something different and give it his full attention. I'm gonna let's start with just maybe Rod and Reggie. Let's start with Reggie, since Reggie back in 2017. I know you can remember that far back. What would you say was the biggest thing that was prompting you to say, you know what, I think I need to kind of go at my career a little differently, and maybe I should consider being my own boss? What was it, do you remember initially, that really started that fire?
It's been a while. No, I know. I do remember it. My background is in technology. Specifically, I was at Microsoft for 20 years. Started in 1996. And I opened this business in 2017. But at some point in time in my career, 20 years is a long time to be in one company, I think, irrespective of which company. But I was reaching a point in my career where, just the overall satisfaction wasn't there anymore. It was a terrific 20 years. I mean, let me get that straight, right? No complaints. It was just awesome. But that, job satisfaction, there's something changing. I was in my 40s, right? The kid, so there was a life change thing happening to me, and then maybe a job change thing. And so basically it all stemmed from a sort of a dissatisfaction, around life. And of course, being in tech, one of the things that you tend to see is people leave, the company to go do startups, right? They start their own company. And I've seen many of these things happening. But one thing I also noticed is the failure rates are also pretty high. Right. I felt like I wanted to go do something on my own. My time at Microsoft was ending. I felt, and so started thinking about what the next steps were. So that was
Gotcha.
sort of the genesis of it.
Rod, how about you? What
Yeah.
was what got things going?
So I'd say it was twofold. I'd been similar to Reggie. I'd been with the group that I was at. I'm in healthcare administration, so I've been the CEO to a privately owned group here in the Spokane area for 22 years. Back in 2020, I guess it had been 20 years. With that company, I had started with them a consulting company where we did some consulting support for other medical groups around. So there was two reasons I would say I got the itch, so to speak, to look at it. One, that private group that I had been with that long, for many reasons coming out of COVID, felt that it might be wiser to be aligned with one of the primary hospital systems in our area. And so my last project over the last 3 years with them was to see if we could successfully put that together. So in 2020, I thought, looking at all the pieces of that project, that we could probably make that successfully happen. At the same time, I knew that would be my last project if we were successful. So I was at a crossroads, and having to shut down the consulting company because they were part owners in that, because I used their time and infrastructure to do that. I always enjoyed building, growing, and creating businesses or things, and I knew that was coming to an end. So I knew I was within 2 to 4 years of a crossroads of what's my next thing. So we started venturing, and our first connection was with FranNet and connected with Charlie and started searching what may make sense, while keeping my doors open, like Charlie mentioned, of possibly still working full time. I did not know whether we would do that or not, but that is where we started putting our foot in the water of seeing if we wanted to do something like this.
And I guess just because I know somebody's going to ask, Rod, you are a semi-absentee owner, but also a multi-ute owner of a company called Club Pilates. I think you're going on location number 4, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And Club Pilates is part of a larger company called Exponential Fitness. Reggie is a full-time business owner with an IT company called Team Logic IT. So,
Yep.
So Charlie, should we open it up to questions that people may have?
Sure. I tell you what, let me get one more in and then
Sure.
we'll I'm thinking about the people that are on the bottom half of the screen, who are in the shoes you were in, just a few years ago, like saying, is this something I should do? I haven't been my own boss before, perhaps, maybe that's something I should try. How do I, how am I going to find the right one for me? What was it for each of you, just kind of briefly, maybe give yourself, a minute. What were the biggest reasons that you chose what you chose? Like, Rod, why Club Pilates?
Yep. So I'll answer that. I don't know, something Blair said that I think would be important for the audience to know. So I did transition out of that company I was talking about, that I knew that would be the last project. But right before that happened, and when it became public, another privately owned medical group here connected with me and they learned about it. So it helps answer the absentee model. I am still now at a different group, as CEO for a practice. So I am doing both at the same time. So I think that's good information to know when we're talking about absentee model. What was important to me is I'm a risk taker, but also conservative at the same time. So I like to pull the trigger, but I like to do it in a measured sense. And so when I started working with Charlie, I told him, I do not want to do a one-site deal. For me and my personality, I need an expandable model that I can work with. And so when we went into potentially exponential, Charlie gave us probably 8 different types of companies that would fit possibly our personality and our interest. And one of them was exponential. And that was more on the docket because of their franchise model. And I think that he knew that I would fit well within that structure and it would potentially be expandable. And so that is how I ended up with Club Pilates, is once I started talking to them, the expandability of what I wanted to do. I bought a territory of 3 sites and then we've expanded since then. And the ability to create a team to manage the business was important to me. And so that is what drove me towards that and allowed me to continue to do my CEO job, which someday I'd like to transition fully into managing at some level the territory we're creating. But this allows me to really chunk down on any lending or things we're doing to leverage, and we can move into that debt free if we move into that in a few years. So that's the reasons behind it.
Great, thanks. Reggie?
Yeah, so for my journey, unlike Rod, I didn't have any actual business background. I was always in software development, engineering side of things. And so that was one of my big concerns, venturing out on my own is, hey, without that kind of business background, how am I going to do? And then I came across this concept of the franchise model, and that seemed very compelling. The fact that there is an existing system, right? And then you basically take that system and then you apply it, right? So the concept around franchising was really interesting, and that's when Charlie and I started working together. And Charlie, do I still have the record of like the longest tenured guy who couldn't make up his mind?
No, you've been beat since then, but
Oh, okay. 1.5 years, just to let you guys know. All right, that's how long he and I were working together, right? And we looked at different franchises, right? One of the cool things, maybe you guys have already done this, is you do this personality type test, which I found just amazing and quite accurate. And then working and trying to see, okay, what kind of franchise would fit. And as I kept looking at all these different franchises, they just weren't feeling right, and then one fine day it just struck me, heck, I've been in tech all my life, and sadly tech is all I know. So it's like, okay, can we get a franchise that's also in tech, right? And that's kind of how we came to Team Logic IT. And that felt like a good fit. We did the due diligence and all that stuff, and then as they say, the rest is history.
I think often the $1 million question for people is, look, if you had it to do all over again, would you do it again? And maybe just instead of a yes, no, I'd say, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have done differently?
So I can answer that on the front end. We talk about the absentee model, and that is where we are headed. And when I say absentee model, that probably means my wife and I both spend 20 hours a week in it. If you guys have ever worked in business and starting a business, it's 24/7 when you start, right? It doesn't matter if you got a team around you or not. I knew that it was a heavy lift for myself, but I kind of knew what was coming. My wife, we were blessed. She has a accounting degree, but we were blessed to have her stay home with 4 kids, and the last one was a senior about the time we started this, so we were on the tail end of it. But I think I would have done a better job of explaining what to expect to her, because she's a heavy lifter as we started building our team, right? We started with her, and then we hired a first general manager, and then we hired it, and now we're up to, I don't know, 30 or 40 employees to manage these sites and the different pieces you have to have filled. And so her role keeps changing, and we keep developing and pulling her out. But she was the finance person, she was a payroll person, she was the HR person, she was the hiring, she was, hey, somebody's sick, you gotta go sit in the studio and get members in, blah, blah, blah. So that was a really heavy lift. And I will tell you, on the front end, I was doing fairly good with my grind, but what ate me up was watching her struggle on never ending tasks, and her not probably not realizing that heavy lift on the front end. And we're working through that now, and we love being in it. But I would have probably painted that picture a little different before we went into it. I don't think we would have changed anything. It would have just been mind awareness before we jumped into it.
Terrific.
So in my case, this is year 5, right? So we just celebrated 5 years, December 2022, 5 years in business. So we survived, there are all these supposed milestones for startups, right? So we survived year 1, year 2, and then here we are in year 5. So, on the whole, we're doing good, right? A guy who didn't know anything about, running a business, building a business, and all that type of stuff, here I am, right? So it's totally doable. If I look back, would I change anything? No. Another way, someone asked me, Reggie, do you have any regrets from, leaving, a job where your paycheck was pretty much, to this? No regrets. 5 years down, no regrets, right? But I'll be honest, it's not easy. It's hard, right? Especially year 1, right? It is hard. There are days when you do feel like throwing in the towel, but you keep at it, right? You keep at it. You pass year 1, you pass year 2, you're beginning to learn. You're getting better, and so on. And then you finally break through, right? So the model works. The system works. You just have to keep doing it, right? Persevere. If there's one thing I would do different from when from the day I opened the doors, it would have been around hiring. Kind of similar to what Rod was talking about, especially in the business I'm in, where we are IT services for other businesses. The team that you have in place is super important. So I should have invested more in getting awesome people. Awesome people are not cheap, right? And I had, because I just opened my doors, and you're just spending, right? As you invest in the business, I should have invested. So that's the one lesson. And so now when I have other potential Team Logic IT owners doing their due diligence, kind of like what you guys are doing, when they call me up, that's one of the things I tell them: invest in the right team from day 1. So that would be the one difference.
That's something that Keith and I were talking about just earlier this morning. There's kind of that sweet spot where, you're trying to be efficient. You don't have unlimited funds to throw at the business. So you're trying to be, frugal, but not foolish about getting yourself stuck in the business. I don't think, Reggie, you were like going out on service calls yourself on purpose.
Not on purpose, but I was.
For that long, so
Yep.
It's like, well, when is the best time to, make that investment so that you really can focus on the bigger picture. And Rod used the term expandable, but expand, scale, really move as quickly as you can, pour gas on the fire to get to the big goal that you've set for yourself. If in fact significant growth is one of your things you're trying to achieve. So let's anybody have a hot question they want to ask?
Yeah, so now's a chance for any of the attendees to take yourself off of mute and ask away. Otherwise, Charlie and I will keep coming up with the questions.
Otherwise, I'll keep peppering them.
Alex, you have a question?
Yes, I have a couple, if you don't mind. So thank you, Reggie and Rod. Truly appreciate you taking the time and talking to us about this. So I'm in the similar process in the very early stages. I'm working with Blair at this point in time. So definitely at this point in time, I'm considering being a semi-absentee franchisee. And like Reggie, I come from the technology industry, though I'm not very technical myself. I'm more of an account manager. So don't have much business experience as you do, Rod. But I do share a lot of similarities with Reggie. But I don't want to be a full-time I don't want to commit full-time there at this point in time. Hopefully, I'll be confident enough to do that at a later point in time. So I'm very calculated risk covers in that measure that I have something to fall on in case I don't do it, which is not going to be what I want to. I want to be successful. So that being said, my question is in terms of two questions. One is, apart from the kind of business we want to be in and all those things, how do you guys figure out, like when it comes to scaling out the marketplace? Like I did have a conversation with a particular franchisor. I'm having a couple of more. One of the things that the first franchisor did tell me is, they told me, you will have to figure out, do your marketing research in terms of what is a landscape of the market for this particular product. You will have to go and do the research to figure out a lot of things, right? So how did you guys go about doing that? If you can just briefly give me a very high level idea, that'll be great. And the second thing is in terms of having family involved, right? So the question is, I'm currently thinking of, we are currently thinking of, my wife is going to resign and she's going to act as the general manager for whichever franchise is. She also may not have, most probably is not going to have any idea on that particular business. Is that going to be a good idea? Or would you guys advise us not to go that path, basically? So sorry for a long-winded question, but thought I would.
Rod, you want to take it since there are a lot of similarities to your situation?
Okay. So let's start with the marketing one, and I'm gonna to brag on Charlie for what he advised me on the front end. It was, make sure you're interviewing the franchise or as much as they're interviewing you. And I guess my first question for you, if they're saying you're gonna have to figure out who your market base is, are they the right franchisor for you? Because when we went through that model, there was some that kind of said that, and there was some that said, show me your market, or they didn't even say, show me your market. They said, let me pull up your market and let me tell you now, different businesses, so get that, but let me tell you exactly who your market is and where you ought to focus your attention. And then we will show you how you will market to that area, right? Completely different aspects. And I'm not saying every franchise can do that, but that was important to me. That's why I pay the money to the franchisor, so they can help me be successful on the front end. So that would be my first, that's how I handle it, is I had them handle it for me. And that's partly what drew me to them. And then I'll shift gears towards the family side. We did a similar thing with my wife. The very first thing I did before we had our first employee was to have an org chart. I wanted everybody to be very clear so there was not confusion. I think you got to be really clear who answers to who, so you don't have 3 or 4 messages and people bounce into other people to get the answer they want. And then once that's in place, let's use your wife as an example, because that's mirroring what we have done. Behind the scenes, I will, if it's beneficial and she wants it, I will help my wife in that, because I've been in that field for a long time, managing people and projects. But on the forefront, she needs to be the spokesperson if those people are answering to her or for her, right? The key is then when we grow and we expand our territory, so now we have a regional manager, we have a lead instructor, they manage groups of 10 people or whatever. The key is for her now to trust those people and allow them to manage, so people don't go around those managers up to her, right? We're right in that dynamic, because as we grow, that didn't used to be the case. Now we're big enough to hire a regional manager. So now we have to kind of retrench our org chart a little bit. But I think having it very clear to everybody and not apologizing about the org chart, and also explain what your goals are in the future of, here's where we are today and here's where we want to get as far as with management, staff, org chart, those type of things. I think that really helps. The other thing with family is we did not allow any of our kids to be involved. And the reason for that, that was our choice. I'm not saying that's a good choice. But if I have a general manager that has one of our kids who's being a knucklehead, whether they think they can or not, they're not going to manage them like they should. And that's not fair to them. So we just decided that's just not an option. So that's how we've handled it so far.
Yeah, so Alex, I would add to that, when you get to the point of talking to other franchise owners, right, franchisees, you'll get a sense of that, how are you able to scope the market, how is sales going to be, and so you'll get a sense of that, when you ask them. But I'll also say, trust your gut. This might be a little bit controversial, but trust your gut, right? As you're looking to the franchises, do all the logical, etc. thinking, but also, does this feel right? Do I and my wife, do we see ourselves working in a business like this, right? So kind of I would recommend doing that mental exercise also, right?
That's a good one. Can you see yourself doing it?
Yeah.
And as you start, and I think that as you start, I think this is true, Rod, Reggie, this was true with both of you. You start off with this kind of maybe medium-sized list of ideas, which is narrow to a short list of ideas. Like, okay, let's really explore this, get some education from the franchisors, and they start to, you're learning about the business model and the industry and so forth. And at some point, after knowing that, if you can't see yourself doing that, can't see yourself in the business, then it's probably not the right, probably not the right fit. You can't make that happen. It doesn't have to be something that you've done before. It doesn't have to be, it can be a new industry, but in terms of your role in the business, you have to be able to imagine yourself doing it and having a good feeling about it, not having nightmares about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to open this up for Keith, James, VJ, Michelle, Scott. Any burning questions on your part? Anything goes.
I guess kind of a dovetail of a previous question. In order to expedite that ramp, did you think, looking back now, it would have been a good idea, or maybe you did do this, to sort of hire ahead of cash flows that were able to support that hire? So say you had the capital necessary, you had enough capital to start out after all the initial startup costs, franchise fees, etc., to hire someone before the business itself had the cash flows to sustain it, as just a way to sort of expedite that. So you can then focus on the sales and revenue aspect of it. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll answer that first, Rod, because that situation hit me hard. Yes, that's what I should have done. Right. I should have ensured that I had that. I had that to invest in the appropriate, so as you're looking at your financing, right, just make sure to add, I don't know, 15-20% on top of that, right, just so you can get, the right, right talent. And when I look at the Team Logic IT franchisees, right, the ones who hit the ground running and then skyrocketed were the ones who had the right, like the people that they could just count on, like especially to take care of all the tech stuff, so they could focus on the, on the business, not in the business, right? That aspect. So that's, as you're growing a business, that's sort of what the model you want to be in. You want to be working on the business and not so much in the business.
Right.
But yes, I should have added that extra cash to my initial investment to hire that more expensive person.
Okay.
So, and I would say our model is every time. So, for example, we're working on building out our 4th studio, and we haven't started construction yet. We're hoping to open it in July. We already have our GM hired, and as soon as we have a couple more pieces in place, which were a couple weeks later than we wished, we will actually be spending a large amount on marketing. And so she will be going around. She's already started meeting businesses around. She's already answering questions. They can find us on the site, even though we're not advertising yet. And so It's a 4-5 month lead time every time we open a studio that we actually have the manager hired, and
Yeah.
that's just part of our opening budget, which is critical.
Thanks, Reggie and Rod. Appreciate that.
So, I think, a couple of takeaways that I'm hearing, themes is invest in people sooner rather than later. Find something where the role feels right. If you're involving family, involve them in the process as early as possible so that there's a clear vision. You have a shared vision of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but also what it's going to take to get there. I want to give the others a chance. So we got time for maybe another question. I think we can go over, Blair, just to.
Yeah, I'm fine. Rod and Reggie, you okay for one more question or
Yep,
so?
yep,
Okay.
yep, few minutes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the reason I'm considering franchise, and I'm like, I haven't even started talking to Blair or Charlie yet. I think I had a call with Blair once. But I'll tell a little bit about myself and what I'm looking in the franchise model, and maybe that'll lead to my question. So basically, I'm currently working in the tech industry, and I've scaled back my involvement in the tech industry, like working only 4 days a week. And 1 day a week, I have been taking off and I have been investing in real estate. And my goal in choosing a franchise is to be able to replace my income that I get from W2 with my business income. So currently I have real estate income, and last tax year, I think I replaced like 50% of post-tax W2 income with the real estate income. But I could feel that, the involvement that's there in creating passive income from real estate, it's taking a longer arc to completely replace my W2 income. So going into the franchise model, how did the income from the franchise, was it like pretty good compared to the income that you were getting from your work in W2 income? Or was it, did it take time to build up that level of income?
I can go first if you want, Reggie.
Yep.
Okay. So part of our deal is we are just turning every piece of income back into the company to open the next studio. So we've done that 4 times now. So our goal is to figure out if we're going 4, 5, 6, 7 of these in the territory, and then stopping there, filling the coffers back up, and then I will decide if I'm going to continue as a CEO in my current role or if I'll transition out. So I would say every studio that we've opened, even though it's the same company, has been different. Some of them hit the gates running, and we opened 2 really, really close together, unfortunately, because we found 2 great locations in the same territory that we had to get built out. And we did that too soon, and we didn't have any staff, and we didn't have the instructors, which is a 500-hour training protocol. So you don't just find them on the street. There's a lot of issues there. That hurt us a little on that one, and we've never got to where we want to yet on that one. That's a heavier lift. The other ones where we could really have that GM hired well ahead of time, really market, those both hit the ground running, right? So I say that to answer your question and emphasize again, hire the right staff up front, spend the money to hit the gates running, because you'll pay for it long-term if you don't. But yes, really out of the gates, we were at least breaking even, if not making money, and growing from there.
Yeah, so in my case, it took a while, right? So again, being very transparent about this, right? This wasn't a get rich fast scheme, right? Year 1 and year 2 were tough, very tough. But then year 3 started getting better, right? And now we're in year 5. And now we're in a good spot. But if you had met me in year 1, Assuming I was brave enough to come out from under the table, it's a different story. But yeah, no. So it's hard work. Again, I won't pull the punches here, right? It's hard work. You got to put in your everything. At least in my kind of business. But it is satisfying, right? So there's the monetary aspect for sure, right? But there's also, there's a reason why, like in my case, right? There was some dissatisfaction at work, right? So that's, yeah. So it is satisfying because now all the time, effort, etc., that you're putting in, in my case, wasn't making Bill Gates richer, right? It was now, towards me and my future, my family's future, right? So I just want to call that out.
So I'll quote Emerson, not Rod Emerson, but Ralph Waldo Emerson. The reward of a thing well done is to have done it. And when I'm talking to clients about, I don't know, is this something that we should think about doing? Use the 5-year home run. If this was a home run, what does your life look like in 5 years? You're your own boss. You're untethered from corporate politics. You're not in fear of the next round of layoffs. You are directing your outcome. You've chosen and are inspiring and developing your team. You're working for your customers. It's yours. And it's an asset that someday you're going to exit. It's going to have value and you're going to sell it. So I get the short-term pressure of I have a job, I was getting a paycheck. Now, if you lost your job, you don't have that anymore. And you're thinking, well, how the hell can I get back to that at least as soon as possible? If you still have it and you're thinking about making a switch, sure, you're thinking, how quick, I would consider myself a success if I could have my business and make as much as I was making in the corporate world. I know I had that. That was, Vijay, that was exactly my mindset. And I always had this picture of my father, because when I would talk to him about, and he was like most of our parents, the baby boomer generation, he worked for the same employer for 50 years. So the idea of me going off and doing something entrepreneurial was, kind of crazy. And he, kind of let me know that. So I thought, well, as soon as I can tell him that I'm making as much as I was before, he'll kind of be like, okay, I get it. So it was kind of a race to that number. And Reggie's right, though. You got to give yourself time to get there. Once you do, you're in a position now that is aspirational. It's really what everybody wants, which is to have it all. Making the money, having the autonomy, having a sense of purpose, having something you can sell down the road. I mean, that's the new American dream, is owning your own successful business. But you have to be willing to put in the time and be patient to get there. So I'm a business owner, and so I'll ask the owner, I'll throw in my own 2 bits about that. Blair, any thoughts to bring us home?
No, real quick though, Alex, do you have a quick question? Because we're already over time.
I know. If is it okay if I just ask the question? If there's no time for it, we can discuss it later.
Rod, Reggie, how you doing?
I'm fine.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. So, so for a semi-absentee owner, what does that 20 hours per week look like? What do you actually do with that 20?
So let's use myself an example, because I'm going to say I'm an absentee owner right now. I've got a 50, 60-hour job that someday I will step out of, and I've got a 5-year plan. If you looked at my 5-year plan, we're on track. So it's very calculated what we're doing here. Right now, what I do is where my strengths lie, I think, and I am coaching our higher level managers as they hit their struggles with staff, with goal setting. I'm pulling the teams together to do a 5-year plan and a 1-year action plan. So we have that. I meet with the management team once a month as I'm all together instead of individual. And we talk about where we are for the month, what our goals are, how we're getting there. So I'm more of the visionary. I'm driving some people nuts because 4 in 2 years is a cluster. I will just tell you that. They would love to start working on the business instead of growing the business. There's some of that. And that's probably been maybe a little accelerated, but there's a reason for that. So that is what my 20 hours look like. And why it's really there is because that's what I enjoy doing. That's my passion. I love growing things. I love helping people grow themselves. If we lose our regional manager, who's going to get to oversee in capacity, maybe 50 people, that's okay. If I helped her get there, it's a bummer, but now I got to replace and train somebody else, right? That's what my passion is. And so that's what I want my 20 hours to look like.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
So good questions, everybody. So I want to thank especially Rod and Reggie today. Thank you so much for your time. It is exponentially important for people to talk to franchisees who have taken the leap, who are doing it, to hear the good, the bad, the indifferent. You know, Charlie and I are business owners as well. We're franchisees as well. I know Charlie and I have been sitting here shaking our heads because we've probably been agreeing with everything that Rod and Reggie have stated. So I think it was very, very good advice that came from those two. So again, thank you, everybody. Charlie and I will do more of these in the future, in addition to our educational webinars that we do every month. To me, this is one of the more fun workshops that we do because it's very, very interactive. So on behalf of Charlie and I, thank you, everybody, for attending. The recording will be coming out shortly. Charlie, any last minute words?
Well, I just want to say to Rod and Reggie, my appreciation, and just to tell you how proud I am of you. I know it hasn't been easy, and you both are total rock stars, and I could not be happier for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Go have lunch. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, guys.